Okay, so this week we're going to talk about a couple of new things. The first is going to be cutting holes in things. The second thing is going to be creating a few simple, basic mechanical joints. And I'm sure there'll be some other information that will sneak in along the way. But first, we're going to talk about cutting holes in things. And you can see I've got some green faces, and that's because Maya doesn't know what to do with those faces, so I'm just going to assign the existing Lambert 1. Okay, so we're going to start really simple with a plane, cutting a hole in a plane, and then we can cut a hole in a box, and then we can cut a hole in a cylinder in a couple of different ways. This is a simpler one, and this is a slightly more complicated way to do it. I could actually make this more complete if I just mirrored this along the back. I just haven't gone through the process of mirroring that. But we will start with this this plane right after I give all the people in class a little quick challenge. Everybody in class had a really fun time with soft selection. So now let's jump on back to cutting holes in things. So this is the progression that I'm going to try to follow. And I guess this means we have to start with this plane. So let's take a look at just what this plane looks like. There's a circular hole in this plane. It is 8-sided. Okay, remember I've been saying that generally when I'm adding round objects, 8 is a pretty good number. It works well with all quads. It gives me plenty of detail. If I hit 3 on the number pad to smooth it out, it's a nice smooth circle. It's easy to work with, and when I'm cutting the holes, it also is a very natural and easy way to work. So let's just jump right in, and hopefully it will make sense. So step 1 is add a plane. Okay, I'm going to turn off the reference layer. Now, I don't need this many subdivisions to create the hole. I'm actually going to set all these down to 0, or I guess 1 is the, yeah, we want 1. Okay, so now I just have a quad, and I want to cut a hole in this quad, and I will need to add edge loops back, but I don't want to do that yet. I want to first demonstrate why we need to have these extra edge loops. Next, I need a nice round shape for the to kind of create the hole. So I'm going to start with a cylinder. Now, mine right now by default is set to 8, but yours may not be. If you go to Create, Polygon Primitives, and Cylinder, and go to your options, if you reset it, the default here is 20. If you add it and then change it to 8, every subsequent cylinder will still start at 20. If you go into the preferences first and set that to 8, every subsequent cylinder will be at 8. So I will do that right there, right now. Cylinder with a simple number of sides, in this case 8. Now I don't need the whole cylinder to do this. I really just need this ring of edges. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into face mode. I'm going to select all of those faces on the bottom and just delete them. I don't need them. And now I'm going to actually select this. I need to move it down onto the surface, and I need to scale it down so that it actually fits within that plane. So I think we can scale it first, and maybe I'll jump to top view, hit F to frame it up. So I'm going to scale it down right about there. Looks good. Okay. Now I just need to move it down so it's on the same level as the plane. So I'm going to turn on my point snapping, everything selected, and just move it down and snap it to one of the points on the plane. Okay. Now, hit F to frame this up. Here's where we're sitting. We've got basically a positive of the hole that we're trying to make, And then we've got this plane. And if we go into wireframe mode, you can kind of see what's going on here. In order for them to actually kind of work together, what I need to do is make them one object. So I'm going to select my circular cap and my plane, and I'm going to go to mesh and combine. Okay, and I'll just name this now. We'll call it plane hole. There we go. Alright, so now I'm going to go into my face mode. This is what I got. I've got one big face, and I've got 8 little faces for the circle. What I actually want is for all of these, to be a hole. And I want them to connect, much like they did, there we go, much like they did over here. Okay, so I need some edge loops here. And I need the same number of edge loops so that I have an equal number of points and edges between the circle and what's left of the plane. Okay, so let me turn that off. And I'm going to go into edge mode. And I'm going to shift right click and insert edge loop tool. And I'm going to do this with multiple edge loops. And I'll add 2 at a time. Okay, you can do this individually too. I'm just going to do 2 at a time because it's a little bit more precise. We're going to add 2 on this axis, right? And then I will scale them apart so they're outside the circle. Okay, I'm basically framing this circle in. It's kind of like if you're building a house and you frame in a window. That's kind of what I'm doing. All right, and then I'm going to go back to my insert edge loop tool and add edges the other direction, in the X direction, and I'll scale those apart. Okay. So now I've kind of framed in this circle. I have framed out my plane. Now I'm going to get a little bit destructive. Go into face mode. I'm going to delete some faces. Actually, yeah, okay, I can delete this face now. We're going to need to do a little bit more work here in a second, but I will show you that momentarily. Okay. So, I've deleted this face, and this is going to be the hole. And what I need to do is I need to connect, this edge loop to this edge loop. But I still don't quite have the right number of faces. I actually should have added 3 at a time instead of 2. But I can just add 1 more, and I can make sure it's right in the center this way. So I'm going to go back to my insert edge loop tool. I'm going to use my multiple edge loops, but I'm going to set the number of edge loops to 1. And now when I add an edge loop, it will automatically add it exactly in the center. So I'll do that on all 4 sides. And now I've got an edge in the center. Okay? So now that I have that, I can now bridge my 2 edge loops because they have the same number of sides. All right? So I'll double-click to select one, shift, double-click to select the other, shift, right-click, and bridge. Okay? Now you can see there's clearly an issue with my bridge. It didn't work as smoothly as it should have. So what I need to do is just do one edge first and tell Maya, no, you just do this one first. Okay? And then I can select the other 2. Now, when I double-click and to select this whole edge loop, it's also selecting these 2 side edges, which will interfere with the bridge. So I need to deselect those. Okay? And now I can bridge. I'm actually going to set my divisions to 0. There we go. Okay? So now, the last thing that I have to do is just delete these inside faces. Okay? So now I've created a plane with a hole in the middle. Okay, that's kind of the long way through that with a bunch of explanation as to why I do it. In a more kind of practical way, I'm going to go through this at full speed as far as how I would work, just so you have that for reference. It's going to be a faster work through for that. I know I want to make a plane with a hole in the middle, so I'm going to add a default plane. I'm going to adjust my subdivisions to, let's see how 4 and 4 look. That looks good because I know that's going to give me, what I'm looking for is 8 edges or 8 vertices around the center here. So that's perfect. I also know that the default size of a plane is 1 by 1. And I know then that this, because it's evenly divided, is actually 0.5 by 0.5. So I'm going to add a cylinder. I'm going to set the radius to less than let's say like 0.2 will be good. My subdivision is good. My height I can set to, I don't know, 1 is fine. Subdivision axis is good. Now, because the height is 1 and it's halfway up and I want this to be on the bottom, I can actually just move my translate Y down 0.5. That's going to snap. You know, that's just the precise way to make sure that those are in the right point without having to snap them, which, by the way, I need to turn snapping off. On the cylinder, I can delete all the faces I don't need. On my plane, I can do the same. Okay, I don't need those faces. Those are stupid. Go away. Whoops. Go away, go away, go away. Now, object mode, I'll select them both. I will combine them. I can rename them, and I'll just rename them rename for the sake of, I don't know, cuz. Now I just need to bridge some edges. Bridge, and then select both of those, deselect the side edges, bridge those again, and then delete all of these stupid faces that I don't want here anymore. Okay, and that's how I would do that. I did that so fast because I do this all the time. When I'm trying to add holes in objects, I'm often looking for just 4 faces that I can delete. Okay? Because if I have 4 faces I can delete, I know that's going to give me 8 vertices, 8 edge segments, which means if I have a perfect 8-sided circle, it's a very easy thing to connect. It's basically the minimum amount of geometry that I know I can get something very clean and very easy to work with. Okay, because from here, I can then, I can extrude things up and out and get a really nice kind of bit of detail. Let's do that again and maybe scale it in this time. Okay, and then maybe we'll do this one more time and move it down.
Whenever I try to bridge, it gives me an error message.
That is, again, whoops, cutting a hole in a plane. All right. So now let's move on to a cube. All right. So we can kind of look at both of these here. And it's going to start in a similar way. I guess we can do the really easy one first, where if we just set our subdivisions to 4, all right, and we can just select these middle faces and delete. Whoops, I had an extra one selected. We can just select those and delete them. And now all we have to do is bridge the 2 edge loops, right? So I'll select, double-click, select that edge loop, shift, double-click, select that edge loop, shift, right-click, and bridge. Whoa, that is not what we want. Okay, again, so if it doesn't give us what we want the first try, we just have to help it along. So I'll select those 2, shift, right-click, and bridge. There we go. Now I can select the rest. And again, when I double-clicked, it selected these 2 side edges that I already have bridged. So I'm going to deselect those, and now I can bridge. Okay, and I can bump the divisions up, which I actually should have done on this edge here too. Or I can leave that at 0 and just add an edge loop after the fact if I need that detail in there. Okay. So that is the really simple, if you need to create a square hole in a cube. It's just a matter of deleting the opposite faces and bridging. It gets a little bit more complicated when you want that to be a circular hole, but not much. So I'm going to add a new cube. All right. And again, I'm going to set it to 4 subdivisions all around. For the same reason as with the plane, is because I know this leaves me with 4 faces in the center, which leaves me with 8 vertices around the outside, which will line up really nicely with an 8-sided circle, or cylinder in this case. Okay, so I've created those. I'm going to select the same faces that I just did. I'm going to delete them. Don't need them. Goodbye. All right. Now I need to create the cylinder, which is going to be the hole. So cylinder. I know a default cube is 1 by 1. So I want the radius of this cylinder, or the hole. I want the hole overall to be about half the size, or maybe a little less. Okay, so that would be 0.5, or we'll say 0.4. So the radius is actually going to be half of that, right? Because the radius is half of the width of the circle. So I want the radius to be half of 0.4, which is 0.2. The height, we know, again, it's a 1 by 1 cube, so we can set the height to 1. Whoops. Height to 1. Now we just need to rotate it, and we need to rotate it so it's in the right direction. So I'm going to rotate it along the X, 90 degrees. Okay, just about there. Let's see, do we want to do any subdivisions? No, we don't. We don't need them. Actually, on the height, let's actually do, we'll do 3 for the subdivisions. Okay. All right, so now we need to combine the 2 objects. So select them both, mesh, combine. This is going to be cube, hole. Okay, real descriptive name, I know. Okay, next step, we're going to delete those end faces that we don't need. So I'm going to click and drag across. We're going to make sure that I don't have anything else selected. Just those end faces. Hit delete. Okay. Now here's a kind of a tricky thing that you might not get until you make the mistake. I'm just going to tell you ahead of time. And it has to do with normals. And again, normals are the direction that the quads, that the faces are kind of pointing. You know, what is the front side of the face and the back side of the face? When we created this cylinder, by default, and it makes sense, the faces, the front side of the faces are on the outside of the cylinder. But we're using this cylinder to make a hole where we actually want the front side of the faces to be on the inside. So I'm going to double click on this cylinder to select all of those faces and go to Mesh Display and reverse normals. Okay, it's going to very subtly swap the shading so that the outside is black and the inside is gray. Okay, and that's just a little thing. You don't have to do it right now. Eventually, if you don't do it, when you get to the materials and shading part, you'll run into an issue, and then you'll just have to do that same command then. It's just easy to do it now if you remember. Okay. I did that. Now, I'm just going to select the 2 edges. Shift for a click. Let's see if it's going to bridge the first try. Nope. Got weird again. So, I'm going to select one edge, and then the other, and bridge. Okay, and it's going to be the same thing all the way around. I can do it, individually. Just selecting each, and then hitting G to repeat the last command. Or I can, do it all at once. Okay, and so now I have bridged those. And that's the same thing on the other side. All right, just repeating. You could also just delete the back half of the cube and mirror it. They both work. I'm curious now that I've attached the front side if the back side is going to cooperate better with the bridge, and it does. Okay. So now I've got a cube with a hole in the middle. Is cutting a hole in a cube. I'll delete that for now. Well, not for now, just for good. So we've done these first three things. Now we're going to get a little bit more complicated here. Let's do the you know what? Yeah, let's do the. We'll do them the same way. Doesn't matter. We're not going to do two separate ones. Yeah, we will. Sorry. I'm just thinking in my head as we go. All right, so we're going to cut a hole in this here cylinder now. And so, again, I want to position it so that there's going to be 4 faces that I can cut a hole through. So on this cylinder, this is one of those instances where I want a cylinder with more than 8 subdivisions to start. All right, you know how I was saying that 8 will get you there most of the time unless you have more detail to add? This is one of those times where you'd have more detail to add when you want to cut a hole in it. Okay, so for this cylinder, let's set the subdivision axis to, let's see what 16 looks like. Yeah, I think 16 will be good. Because then we'll have a hole that'll be about that wide. Yeah, that'll work. Subdivision's height. Let's go with, I'm looking for something that is, I want these faces to be relatively square. Again, just to make things easy. They don't have to be, it just makes things a little bit easier. Yeah, we'll keep it at 6. Okay. I'm also going to add a subdivision into the cap. Okay, this way I've already got an edge loop in there, and it just makes, if in the future I would want to do any additional editing, it just makes it easier. All right, so I've got my first cylinder selected, and the first thing I'm going to do is select my middle 4 faces on both sides and delete them. Whoops, I had an extra selected. I don't want that one deleted. That one can stay. Okay. So if I want a square-shaped hole, now I just have to bridge, right? Just like we did with the first cube. But I want to make it more complicated than that because why not? So now I'm going to add another cylinder. Okay, this one I'll keep at 8 subdivisions. I'm going to rotate it around the x-axis 90 degrees. And I'm going to bring the radius down so it fits inside, right? And it looks like that's about the right size. Okay, so far, this is working the same way as the cube, right? I had a few more subdivisions on this larger cylinder, but it's working the same way. Created the cylinder. I deleted the holes, or the faces for the hole. I've added the... Now, I guess I should, specifically say, I'm adding a cylinder because it's a perfect circle, all right? And these are because I want to cut perfect circular holes in the object. So adding a cylinder is just the guide to start that. Right? If it didn't need to be a perfect circle, then I could just delete the faces and kind of extrude them in and move them around individually and move the vertices around to get whatever shape of a hole I wanted. But I'm a perfectionist and I want this to be a perfect circle, so that's why I'm using a cylinder. Okay. So I've got that in place. The next thing that I'm going to do is combine the objects. So remember, select them both in object mode, mesh, and combine. We will rename this. We will name this cylinder hole 1. Okay. Did I spell that right? I don't know if I did. Yeah, I guess I did. Okay. Just looks weird. So now, same thing. I can delete these cap faces. I don't need them. They are useless to me. Same thing here. Okay, I'm going to run into the same problem that I did with the cube, in that with this inside hole, these faces are reversed, right? Because the darker one's on the inside. I want to switch those. So go to Mesh Display and Reverse. Okay, because the inside of this is going to be visible, not the outside, right? The outside is going to be on the... This might be a confusing phrase. The outside of this cylinder is going to be on the inside of the overall object. Okay, so it's going to be hidden. I don't need to see that. That's why I'm reversing them. Okay, but now I've got, the same. I've got 8. You can look at this in vertex mode. We've got 8 vertices around the outside here, and we've got 8 vertices around the outside here. So now we can bridge them. Okay, so I'm going to select. Let's see if this works. I doubt it will, but we'll see. Oh, hey, I got surprised. It actually worked. Okay. Same thing on the back side. Double-click to select this. Double-click to select this edge. Shift, double-click to select the outside edge. Shift, right-click, bridge. And again, you can also use this button for bridge, or you can go to, where is it? Edit mesh and bridge there. Okay. It's in multiple places. Okay, so now I've got a hole cut in the cylinder, but if you kind of rotate around, you can see that it's a little bit bumpy. And that's because these vertices aren't lining up with the rest of the cylinder. And so the way that I would fix that is I'm going to jump into my top view, and you can really kind of see how these are not lined up. So I'm going to go into vertex mode. All right, I'm going to click and to select the, okay, there we go. Okay, vertex mode, and I'll select these, and I just want to kind of bring them down so it's more in line with the cylinders. Okay, so it stays round, right? I'll do this in quad view so you can kind of see how this is working. Oops, actually I want to be looking at the front here because that's what I'm going to do next. All right. So I've got, you can see that these are sticking out and they're kind of ruining the shape of the cylinder, right? So I'm going to select these. All right, and I just want to move them in. Oops. So that they line up a little bit better. All right, and the same thing with these ones. I'll select those, and we're going to move them in so that they line up a little bit more circular. All right. So now when I look at this object, okay, it looks a lot better. Let's see if we can go back to how we are. Okay, things look a lot smoother. A little rougher on the backside. I did a better job on the front, but you can even hit 3 to smooth it out. Okay. Now, as we hit 3 to smooth it out, it looks a little bit soft and square and weird. And so the last step to kind of polish this off is going to be to add a couple of extra edge loops. So I'm going to go to edge mode, and go to open up my insert edge loop tool. I'm going to select equal distance from edge, and I'm going to click and add one pretty close on both sides here of this main edge. I did equal distance from edge and not relative distance because here's what happens if I do relative distance, okay? You can see how it's not really a perfect circle as I get closer. Even if I get really close, it's still not going to be even all the way around. And that's because it's just splitting the difference between this edge loop and this edge loop here, right? So I don't want that option. I want equal distance from edge, and then depending on which side I try to add this on, it will reflect that shape. So if I try to add it on this side, it'll be more square. And if I try to add on this side, it'll be that circular shape that I want. Okay. I know I've been over that before. I just never hurts to reiterate, right? So now if I hit 3 on the number pad and jump into object mode, you see that's a nice, clean looking circle there. Huzzah. Here real quick as we continue to cut holes into things. Okay, it's like a toddler with a power drill. Just holes everywhere. We can delete that. So I'm going to show you how I did this one, which I did a little bit more precisely. But let's take a quick detour here. And how would you cut a hole in a sphere? Now, if you wanted to do anything that was off-center, that would be kind of difficult, right? Things get a little bit more complicated when you're not trying to be perfect and on-center and you know, things of that nature. However, if you are okay with things being centered and even, it's a lot easier with a sphere, actually. Because what you can do... Hey, look, you can see the camera. I don't want to see the camera. Go away. Let me set this to like 16 and 16 maybe. Or 12 and 12. Okay. What you can do with a sphere is you can just select the faces, delete them, and then bridge them. Oh, that spiraled. Yeah, that is actually really cool. I like that. It's not what I wanted it to do, but it still looked cool. That's what Bob Ross would call a happy accident. Okay. Then you just, obviously connect one, and then you deselect those and bridge. And now I have made a circular hole in a sphere. Okay, it's easy because you already have the edge loops that perfectly conform to the surface with the sphere, as long as you rotate it in the correct orientation. That's the easy one. Let's get back to the hard way, or the hard kind of process here. So I have this here cylinder, and we're going to make this a little bit more complicated. So I'm going to do like, let's see, 6. No, we need more than that. Let's go like 32. 32 seems like a good number. And subdivision height, that seems, we'll go 8. Okay, and maybe I actually want that to be 24. Okay, I feel good about that. We can set the subdivision caps to 1. Sure, that'll work. I've got my initial cylinder created, and again, I like to work in kind of even numbers, so this one is going to be all of these faces. So I've got those faces selected. Whoa, I clearly had too much selected on them. Don't want those selected. And then I know I want these deleted as well. Okay, make sure, yep, don't want that. Okay. Hit delete. Oh wait, I don't want to delete those yet. I lied, because I've got something very important to do first. So now what I want to do is I'm going to leave those selected because I want to kind of talk this through. These are the faces that I'm going to delete eventually. So if these are what I'm going to delete, this is going to leave 1, 2, 3, well, I can't really do this at the same time, so let's go to multi, and then I can select faces and point out vertices, right? Okay, so I have all of these. This is going to leave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 vertices, right? 16 edges, 16 vertices. So that's what my circle is going to need to be, a 16-sided circle. All right. So with that in mind, I'm going to create my 16-sided circle. So I'm going to do, it'll be a new object, new cylinder, subdivision axis 16. I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees along the x-axis. I'm going to bring my radius down. I'm going to turn on the wireframe unshaded, which is this little icon right here in the viewport, just so I can check my size and see, make sure I'm where I want to be, which right about there looks good. Okay. So that's what, 0.44? Let's maybe make it an even 0.4. Okay. I don't need to worry about subdivisions or anything like that. All right. So now I'm going to move this whole thing away, because this time I'm not going to cut the whole cylinder all the way through. I'm just going to worry about the front side. Let me turn that off because it's annoying and I don't like it. Now I'm going to delete all of these faces on the back side. Bye. Okay, so now I'm just left with a 16-sided circle and the cylinder that is going to cut the hole in. Now what I want to do is, before on the other cylinder, once I connected everything, then I move those corner vertices so that it conformed to the shape and didn't distort and look bumped out, right? Well, now what I want to do is I want to conform this circle first before I cut the hole and you know, combine and attach things. And so the way that I'm going to do that is there's a new type of snapping, and it's a surface snapping. And the way that you do that is you actually have to tell it what surface you want to be snapped to. Okay, it's called a live surface. So if I select this cylinder, and then let me name this. We'll call it no, not fancy. We'll just call it big cylinder. Okay. So if I select this cylinder, and then in my snapping options, the far right one is just a plain magnet, and it says make the selected object live. So I do that, and that turns blue, and then the field next to it turns blue with the name of the live surface. Okay? When a surface is live, I can't select it. Okay? No matter what I do, I cannot select my live surface. However, it means that I can now snap things to that surface. Now, if I just select my circle and move it, not really anything happens. It's you know, kind of boring, really. But if I go, and I'm going to go into vertex mode, I want to select, because I want to snap these points to the surface. And now if I push it back, we're getting kind of weird here. Let's see, I want to, hold on a second. I don't know why this isn't working, because it's working for all 5 students in this room using the exact same process that I'm trying to demonstrate here. But for whatever reason, when I select all my vertices with snapping to cylinder on, so yeah, this process is working great for everybody except for me for whatever reason, probably because I'm recording and trying to teach. But if you select all of the vertices, it should snap to that live surface perfectly. Again, I don't know why it isn't, because I bet if I just add this here cylinder, and let's see if we make this torus a live surface, and then select this and see if that does it. No. This should snap and actually maintain its shape perfectly. You can see that that's how, you know, it snaps and conforms to the shape of whatever I decide is the live surface. Yeah, I don't know why this isn't really working for me. Short of it's just trying to frustrate me, because it is working for everybody else. And if you're following along, there's a pretty good chance that it's working for you too. That's how that should work. I'm sure I will return to this in a more practical application in future videos, and it will work perfectly. It's just not right now. So you'll have to either take my word for it or find another way around until Maya decides to cooperate. So I hope at least 80% of this video was helpful and informative for cutting holes and things. We will return shortly with more fun times in Maya.